What's up guys, CodefForge here, welcome in the next video. Today we'll learn about the joint table inheritance strategy using JPA and Hibernate in the Java Spring Boot application. We'll start with generating the project which we will use in this video, and for that we'll use Spring Boot initializer. Almost everything is default. I have changed things like group, artifact and the name of the project. On the right side you can find the dependencies which we will use, and it is H2 database for storing the data and testing things out, Spring Web and Spring Data JPA. Okay, so with this knowledge we can generate the project and open it in the IDE. Okay, here we are, and we'll start with navigating to the source, main, resources, and over here the application properties. I will paste configuration which we are using across entire JPA series. So it is basically configuration of the JPA and H2 database. And if you don't know what's going on here, you can check out my video which is dedicated to the configuration of the H2 database, where I am explaining all these properties. We can move on and create packages for our classes. So we go to the Java and the main package of our application. Over here we want to right click and select package, and the first one will be called model. We want to create another one, so we want to right click again, select the package, and this time we'll call it repository. Now let's create our superclass for our inheritance. So we want to select new Java class inside the model package, and we'll call it infantry. We'll also have two subclasses, and the first one will be called archer and the second one will be called knight. That looks good, and we'll start with our superclass. First of all, we want to mark it with the entity annotation, and also we want to specify the inheritance strategy. So we'll use inheritance annotation, and between the parentheses we'll specify the strategy and we'll set it to the joint. Now let's define some properties which will be common for our subclasses. So we'll start with the ID annotation and generated value annotation, and the strategy will be set to auto, and we of course want to put it on the private long ID field. Next field will store infantry type, and we'll have three types of infantry. It will be light, medium and heavy. And to do this we will create a new enum. So we want to right click on the model, select new Java class. We want to switch it to the enum and we'll call it infantry type. As I said, we will have three types of infantry, and it will be light, medium and heavy. So now we can go back to our infantry class, and over here we can define private infantry type field with the name type. Since it's enum, we want to annotate it with the enumerated annotation, and we want to store strings in the column, so we'll say value and we'll set it to enum type string. Let's add few more properties over here. So we'll also have private integer move speed field. Next one will be private integer durability, and the last one will be private integer and it will be attack. Our fields looks good, so now we can generate default constructor because it's required by the Hibernate. So we'll select none, and here is our default constructor. And we'll also generate constructor for our fields. We'll skip ID because it is auto-generated value. It is almost good. We'll change our class to abstract. so it will be not possible to create an instance of this infantry class. Now we can take care of our subclasses, so let's go to the archer first and we'll annotate it with the entity annotation. It will also extend the infantry superclass, so it will inherit all of the properties and the mapping information. Our archer class will have only one extra field, which will be specific for this class, and it will be private, integer, and it will be range. We will also need the default constructor, so let's generate one. And it will be this one, and we will select none. So here's the default constructor, and we will have to generate the constructor for the superclass and for our range field. So it will look like this. In the first place, we are calling the constructor from the superclass, and later on we are initializing our range field. Now let's move to the knight class, and first of all we want to annotate it with the entity annotation. It will also extend our infantry superclass, so we want to say extends infantry. We'll have one field that is specific for our knights, and it will be private, boolean, and we'll call it shield. So this will indicate if our knight has shield or not. We'll also generate constructors, so we go over here, and first one will be the default constructor, and the second one, which will allow us to create objects of the knight class. So it will be call of the super constructor in the first place, and then initialization of our shield field. Okay, so our inheritance looks good. So Hibernate should be already able to generate the database structure. So we can go to the Maven, open our project here, go to the plugins, Spring Boot, and select Spring Boot Run. So after a few seconds, our application should be up and running, and we'll be able to open the H2 web console. Okay, here's the console, we can log in. And we can see that we have three tables, one for each entity which we have created. So let's check out the columns for the infantry. And we can see that it's all correct. The common part will be stored over here. And if we select the archer, for example, we can see that it only has the range, but it also has the ID, which is the reference to the infantry table. So this ID will be used by Hibernate to join archer and infantry tables to retrieve all of the information about the archer entity. So we can close it up and insert some data. So I will close it, stop the application. But before we will insert the data, we will have to create the repositories for our entities. So we have to right click on the repository package and select Java class. We want to switch to the interface, and the first one will be infantry repository. We'll also have one for the archers. So again, Java class interface, and it will be archer repository. And the last one will be for the knight. So we select Java class again, interface, and it will be knight repository. Let's start with the infantry repository over here, and the first thing is to annotate it with the no repository bin annotation. Thanks to that, Spring will not create a definition for this infantry repository, so it will be not possible to get this bin from the context. Our archer and knight repositories will extend this infantry repository, and because of that we will here extend crewed repository, so we don't have to do this in the archer and knight repository. And we'll define it for our superclass, so we'll say infantry here, and it has the primary key type of long, so we'll say long over here. It looks good, so we can move to the archer repository, and in the first place we'll annotate it with the repository annotation. One more thing that we have to do over here is to say extends, and it will be infantry repository. So thanks to that, we don't have to extend the CRUD repository again over here. And we can move to the knight repository and also annotate it with the repository annotation. And it will also extend infantry repository for the same reasons. So we say extends infantry repository. Now we can move to our main class and persist some objects. So we go over here. And in the first place, we want to access the context and retrieve our beans. So we'll say configurable application context with the same name, and we'll assign the result of the run method to our new variable. And now we can retrieve our archer and knight repositories. So we'll say infantry repository, and the first one will be archer repository. And now using the context, we can say configurable application context get bean. And we want to retrieve the archer repository, so we'll say archer repository.class. We want to do the same for the knight repository, so over here we'll say infantry repository. Knight repository is the name of the variable, and we'll use context again to call the getBean method, but this time it will be for the knight repository.class. We can proceed and create our objects, and we'll start with the archer. So it will be the infantry type and the variable will be archer. And now we'll use our constructor, so we want to say new archer. And now let's provide the arguments. So in the first place we have to provide the infantry type, and the archer will be the type of light infantry. We'll have the move speed next, so it will be 300, durability 500, attack will be 100, and the range will be 1000. At the end we want to put the semicolon, and also let's move it to another line, here like this. Let's also create the knight, so again infantry type with the name knight, and now we will say new knight to use our constructor. It will have following arguments, so the type of infantry will be heavy, move speed will be 280, let's say. It has to be slower because it's heavy infantry. So durability, let's say 1000, attack will be 300, and let's say it will have shield. And using the repositories we can persist our objects. So in the first place we'll call archer repository and we'll use save method, and we can persist the object by passing it to the save method. And we can do the same for the knight, so this time we'll use knight repository, call the save method and pass the knight object. Like this. Now we can start our application to check out if our objects will be persisted. So we want to say Spring Boot run, and after a few seconds it should be up and running. And we'll open the web console. Here it is, we can log in and select the data from the infantry table. And over here in this infantry table, the common part of our entities is being stored. Let's take a look on this first row. It has ID 1 and the infantry type is set to light. So this is probably our archer. And this ID over here is the primary key. And if we navigate to the archer table, we can see that the ID is the same, and this column over here is the primary key, but in the same time it is the foreign key which stores the reference to this infantry table. So it will be used to join the infantry and the archer table to retrieve all of the required information about the archer entity. Okay, we can close it up and try to delete some data from the database. Okay, and let's say we'll delete our archer. So we say archer repository. This time we will call delete method and we'll pass our archer object over here. Let's start the application again. So we go to the main event and we will click Spring Boot Run. And after a few seconds, we will open the web console again. And in the logs, we can already see that Hibernate deleted something from the infantry table, but also from the archer table. But let's make sure and open the H2 web console. Okay, here it is. We can log in and let's select the data from the archer table. We can see that the data from the archer table has been deleted, but we also had the second part of our data in the infantry table, so let's check it out. And we can see that it is also deleted and only the information about our knight has been left. Okay, so this is the joint table inheritance strategy using JPA and Hibernate in the Java Spring Boot application. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Remember about liking the video. And if you want to see more, remember about subscribing and turning on the notifications. Thank you and see you next time.